Hello again, it's Dr. Grayson. Hope you're having a great week. Today's topic is descriptive research. So as you recall, there are three types of research, and they are exploratory, descriptive, and explanatory or causal research. So last time we spent a lot of time talking about exploratory research. So this time we're going to dig into descriptive. And so I'm going to re-explain the three basic types of research, and then I want you to think about characteristics and the basic uses of descriptive research, various types of research that you can use in your design of your studies, and then how you're going to use descriptive research in your project. So just a reminder that you have an exploratory assignment that you should be working on if you haven't already. So the three types of research. First is exploratory, and remember this is helping you define a problem. We looked at focus groups and interviews and digital ethnography and personal ethnography in really trying to define a problem or a question or learn more. And remember as well that exploratory research also includes literature search. And so when we're doing an exploratory study, it's often qualitative, meaning it's not statistically significant or quantitative, but it allows us to understand deeply what a subject is trying to accomplish to tell us. So today we're going to talk about descriptive research, which again is looking at different types of variables. So you might have a scenario where you have a person that comes with its, a person, we all come with our own characteristics, our own personality, our own behaviors. And maybe you want to understand a target audience or maybe a particular demographic and compare it to another variable. So perhaps you're interested in understanding people who watch movies in a movie theater versus watching a streamed movie at the same time, like Netflix or HBO Max or some other streaming service where you could choose whether you're going to go to the movies or watch it in your house. So that, the movie, how they consume the movie, the content, could be compared to a number of different variables. Personality, age, do I have a car or not? So what we're trying to define in descriptives is understanding relationships between variables. Who's going to buy something? How much are they willing to pay? All of these marketing type questions that we want to quantify. And causal research, if you recall, is cause and effect. So if I do X, then I predict Y will happen. I'll look at the change in Y. So let's use our movie example. If I were to give everyone who goes to the movie in the movie theater a free box of popcorn with every movie, how does that impact or how does that change the behavior of those people who wouldn't go to the movie theater before, maybe those who only stream? So we're looking for cause and effect. So today we're talking about descriptive research, and what we're looking for, as I mentioned earlier, is describing the characteristics of certain groups of people. And every attribute that we are attempting to describe or understand is called a variable. And we want to see how people if there's relationships between how people behave and those particular variables. We like to make predictions based on the information that we get from these groups of people. And by doing that, we determine the relationships between the variables. Some of the things that we often research in descriptive are the W's, the who, what, where, why, when, and how. So descriptive research gives us quantity, the ability to use quantifiable samples or respondents to help us build these connections or build these relationships and better understand them to help us make better business decisions. So there's lots of different types of research from descriptives. The first is what most of us will use. And you are generally in your marketing career, probably in your first job, you're going to start creating surveys like the survey that we're going to do in this class. And this is what we call a descriptive survey. And what we use this for is to understand the data about various subjects, so people in general. And it's designed to understand which conditions can be obtained among these subjects. So a good example of this would be, are red cars sold more often to Gen Z or millennials? So we're trying to understand, by gathering data, how these different subjects interact with what we call the dependent variable. Do they buy red cars or not? Now, a normative survey is looking at the extent to which there is a normative element. In the descriptive normative survey, the results of the study should be compared to the norm, so the average, the like. So think about something like this. The amount of daily water consumption based on consumers who drink Coke Zero on a daily basis. So if you think about it, if I'm a soda drinker, do I drink less water during the day? Or do I substitute that water with a soda? So we look at the norm, or the average amount consumed of water for all consumers, and we compare it to those who just drink Coke Zero. All right, descriptive status. Now this is a quantitative description technique that seeks to fill real world situations. So let's look at compared household income to the price spent on a new car. So real world, you know about me what my income is, or you can get a range based on some demographic information you're going to buy, and you can find out based on those people in that income range, what price are they willing to spend on a car. All right, we have descriptive comparison, which looks at two different variables that are not manipulated. So in this case, we're going to establish a formal procedure to conclude that one is better than the other. All right, so we do this a lot in promotions research. So let's say you are a digital marketer and you have two ads, and each one of the ads, perhaps they have a different visual, maybe a visual of the product, or maybe the second ad has a visual of a person using the product in their everyday life. So as a digital marketer, you're going to test the results of each one of those ads and determine which ones performs better. So you could do that with copy on the same ad. You could do that with different colors, etc., different product descriptions. So you are not going to manipulate it. You're just looking at which one is better than the other. A correlative survey. Now we do this a lot in marketing, is we determine the relationships between two variables, whether it's positive or negative or neutral. And are they directly proportional, inversely proportional, or not related at all? So let's say if we determine age as variable A has a strong relationship with the product sale, variable B. It could be positive, meaning they move in the same direction. It could be inverse, meaning as one gets bigger, the other gets smaller. Or it could be there's no relationship at all. So we do a lot of correlative survey work in our marketing discipline to understand the relationships between two variables. So in that case, we are going to actually do correlative surveys in our project. So there's a couple other things I want to note about descriptive research. So you've got, say for example, you're doing a study and you want to examine the same phenomenon year over year or different points in time. So we call this a repeated measure over time. But the thing that's important is you have to have the same sample. So I have there's a 75-year study that Harvard does every year focused on the secret of living a fulfilling life. So they have watched the same group of people for 75 years to determine, based on their variables, what makes them happy or not. So that would be looking at the same group of people year over year. So there's a fixed sample, which is they're measured repeatedly over time with these same variables. So maybe it is, are you married or not? Are you in a relationship? How much money do you have? What kind of cars do you drive? All of these different variables are going to stay the same every time they research these subjects. A discontinuous panel is that the sample of respondents who are measured are respect to different variables. So they use the same respondents, but they use different variables over time. So that's longitudinal. A cross-sectional study is that you're going to use a single point in time. So maybe every year they use the same study, but they use a different sample of people. They're not looking at the same respondents every single time. So that's kind of the difference, and it's a really important notation. If you want to do longitudinal analysis for marketing, you need to make sure that you've got that you've got the same sample over the same period of time, and then you can decide whether you're going to use different variables or the same variables. So let's talk a little bit about, so I mentioned most of the descriptive research is done through surveys. That's what most of you will be doing. So you need to make sure when you're developing a survey that you ensure that the survey is clearly defined questions. I will tell you, you got one shot to get it right. It's not easy to get respondents for a survey, and you don't want to go, oh my gosh, I forgot to ask this question. So make sure, remember, every question has a set of variables. And a variable, if you remember, is that attribute or that characteristic that you want to measure. So you want to capture all of the variables in the questions you're answering. And you also want to try to keep those variables consistent over time if you plan on doing a longitudinal survey where you're going to do the same survey over and over. Because it's important that you have the same set of questions or you can't create comparisons from one data set to the other. So a good example of that could be the census. So the census asks the same questions year over year so that they can compare different points in time. All right, so I talked a little bit about variables. So I want to show you quickly. In the next module, we're going to spend a lot of time on variables. So in this case, you have got two different variables, or actually two different variables you're looking at. One is store preference, and one is age. So before you're attempting to ask a question, oftentimes it's really good to create what I call a dummy table, which allows you to look at what are the things I'm attempting to measure. So say, for example, you're interested in buying a pair of sneakers, or you're researching different types of people who want to buy sneakers. So you ask them, you want to know what their store preference is. So if you're doing a survey, you're going to likely have populated those stores you're interested in measuring, or maybe you've got an other category which would include everybody else, or you ask them others specify, which means add in a fourth store you prefer. So in this case, we've got variable 1, which is store preference, and then we are comparing it to variable 2, which is age, and here we have age ranges. So I've got 3 different store preferences: Finish Line, Foot Locker, and Athlete's Foot, and then by age, and you could say you could write a question such as, which store do you prefer to purchase your sneakers? And then you are also going to capture the demographic variable in another question. How old are you? Or which age range do you fall in? That way you can compare the two. So you can determine whether or not there is a relationship between age and preference of stores. So that is a good example of descriptive research, and a great way to do your thinking is to create what we call a dummy table here. All right, so I know that was brief, but just want you to think about the 3 types of research, when you're going to use each of them. What types of research in descriptive does it intrigue you? Are you interested in longitudinal? Are you interested in certain variables? And it's all going to be based on that objective that you create for your research question. What types of research are you considering for your project? You will all be doing a quantitative survey. So this is the part of just explaining to you the types of surveys you can do. And you can handle a situation where ethics comes into question. So we will have a separate discussion on ethics, but always know that it's really important that you follow the ethical standards of research. So as always, if you have questions or comments, feel free to email me in Canvas. If you're interested in subscribing to my YouTube channel, there's the link. I'd be happy if you would do that. I hope you've enjoyed descriptive research, and next time we're going to talk about explanatory/causal research. So take care. Have a wonderful rest of your week.